Hi, everyone. My name is Calder Bethke. I'm a master's student as well as an IndigeFEWSS trainee. I'm here to introduce our final Native Voices in STEM seminar for the school year. We will be back in the fall. To start off, we're going to start with UA land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the Oldham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education, offerings, partnerships, and community service. Now to introduce our seminar series, the Native Voices in STEM seminar series is co-sponsored by the NSF NRT Indigenous Food, Energy, and Water Security and Sovereignty Program, the Controlled Environment Agriculture Center in the Department of Biosystems Engineering, the University of Arizona Sloan Indigenous Graduate Partnership, the Water Resources Research Center, the Indigenous Resilience Center, and the Office of Societal Impact. The seminar highlights Native scientists, engineers, educators, leaders, and social activists. It offers students an opportunity to network and learn about research and careers of Native leaders in various fields. Now I'm going to introduce our speakers, my friends and colleagues, Chantel and Jaymus. Chantel Harrison, Diné is a graduate student at the University of Arizona's Controlled Environment Agriculture PSM program. She is a UArizona IndigeFEWSS Fellow, UArizona Sloan Scholar, and Native Pathways Fellow. Her current work focuses on sustainable food systems in Indigenous communities, utilizing controlled environment agriculture, CEA, from an Indigenous perspective. She is currently leading an Indigenous greenhouse research project, which aims to respectfully cultivate Indigenous plants in partnership with Indigenous growers and organizations. Additionally, her work with Indige Planted LLC aims to empower tribal communities to reconnect with plant relatives through garden education and Indigenizing STEM curriculum. Long-term, her interests include contributing solutions that address food sovereignty and food accessibility in urban and rural Indigenous communities. Jaymus Lee is a graduate student at the University of Arizona's Applied Biosciences PSM program in Controlled Environment Agriculture within the Department of Biosystems Engineering. He is Diné, a member of the Navajo Nation, whose family comes from the Four Corners area. He completed the IndigeFEWSS NSF Fellowship and most recently worked as a Sustainability, Agriculture, and Water Futures intern with the Babbitt Center. He is finalizing a pilot project between UArizona and Diné College to develop a novel and sustainable solution for off-grid food production within controlled environment agriculture systems. His current scope of work focuses on off-grid greenhouse and hydroponic system design, Indigenizing STEM curriculum, and would like to further study the role of CEA systems on tribal lands to address issues in the food, energy, water, nexus, and food sovereignty. Now I'm going to turn the mic over to our speakers. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Calder. Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to be here today. Again, my name is Jaymus Lee. I am a graduate student, as you heard our wonderful bios, but I'd like to do my traditional introduction. So Yate, She Jaymus Lee Unishe, Bilagana Nishle, Bitani Bashichin, Bilagana Deshiche, Kanachini Deshinali. So as was mentioned, I will be, talking a little bit about my project that I've been working on since probably 2001, maybe, 2001. But it is an off-grid CEA greenhouse for food production. So it's a collaborative project between Diné College, which is a tribal college here on the Navajo Reservation, and the University of Arizona. And I'd also like to acknowledge my mentor who's been helping me throughout my program, Dr. Murat Kasira. Again, a little bit about me. I introduced myself. Those are my clans right there, so we can make some connections. But also, aside from being a current master's student, I do have some professional experiences. I did some research with the Native American Research Internship, and I was also a program coordinator afterwards, working with Indigenous students that were interested in health and medicine. I was also a public health intern at the National Indian Health Board in Washington, D.C., where I wrote some briefs and summaries and help tribal communities interested in public health programs. Also did some clinical and basic research, and recently wrapped up an internship with the Babbitt Center of Land and Water Policy, where we looked at sustainable future of agriculture in the Southwest along the Colorado River border, focused specifically with tribes, and then also currently working as a marketing and social media manager for a landscaping company. But yeah, so this is a picture of me. I got to, through the university and the UAriz Center, I was able to go on a 10-day rafting trip. So got to reconnect with the Southwest a little bit more. Right there, I also have a picture of my father's family's ranch in Tisnaspas, Arizona. And then also my local chapter, Shiprock, where you can find that wonderful mural. So I would like to do a little bit of background. So IndigeFEWSS is kind of where I got my project started, or I guess the idea. So IndigeFEWSS, I'm sure there's been a lot of talk about it, you know, a little bit about it, but IndigeFEWSS had a pilot project, which is the overall research theme was to develop novel and sustainable solutions for off-grid production of safe drinking water, brine management operations, and controlled environment agriculture systems. So this is some of their major research efforts, and mine was the focus of controlled environment agriculture, but also working closely with the photovoltaic group and the water management group. And before I dive right in, I did use the term CEA, which is short-term or a short word for controlled environment agriculture. So a quick brief introduction. So CEA is a type of agriculture that provides physical protection and optimal growing conditions throughout a crop's development. So really it focuses on a variety of structure types like greenhouses, what kind they can be, what materials are made out of, what climate they're created for. And then also looking at climate control sensors and systems. So looking at sensors that'll tell you when to increase the heat or decrease the heat, improve ventilation, a lot more sophisticated technology built within it. And then a variety of irrigation and fertigation systems, which are the ways that you feed and water your plants. And then hydroponics is just another type of horticulture that involves growing plants, usually crops without soil, so in a nutrient solution. And yeah, so it's an ancient practice that has recently been coined, but something that has been gone back to Indigenous people for time immemorial. So yeah, so that is a brief introduction to those terms. So again, I've been working on this pilot project. Before we got started, I can't say that I was the one that helped start this, but getting the background from it, the pilot project was really like the University of Arizona sat down with Diné College, asked what their wants and needs were for this project, and really worked within the community to be able to understand what they wanted after all this was done. Because creating novel and sustainable solutions for communities that won't be able to sustain them afterwards is never beneficial for anyone. So again, so on the far side of the screen, this is what their hoop house looked like before. Very simple plastic covering. They were using garden beds, so traditional soil. And it was kind of used by the community a lot to grow leafy greens that they supplied to the school and the hospital. So they wanted to continue to do that. They also wanted to incorporate a variety of other plants like tomatoes. They talked about strawberries and some potential for some herbs. But those were some of the things that they listed as wants for this project moving forward. When I talked about sustainability, so again, creating a space for the college and community and understanding what they want and need from the project. So in the center, this right here is a more sophisticated greenhouse that is actually right next to ours, or the one that we're renovating. So this is built by a different group who had the intentions of giving the community the best of technology and CEA structures, but unfortunately, it wasn't sustainable because there was no actual electricity to be able to plug in all these systems. So it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't meeting the community's needs. It wasn't realistic. So again, we wanted something that would provide something similar, but would be actually practical and usable for the community. And then this picture right here, we have met with students. We've went and taught them the basics of CEA, the basics of hydroponic growing, These are students from the Teacup at Diné College, where we got to sit down and teach about food modules, which I'll talk a little bit more as we progress forward. But again, really understanding what the community's needs and goals were for this project. And again, just highlighting some goals. So this is what the greenhouse or the hoop house looked like before. Very primitive structure as far as it needed, a lot of the components needed to be replaced because a lot of the plastic was degraded. There were rips, the covering sheet, the black tarp that was over it, which is covering, needed to be replaced also, and some of the things within the structure needed to be replaced. So the goal of this was to renovate the high tunnel hoop house, change it from traditional soil farming to hydroponic systems, and then collaborate or create a collaborative effort between the University of Arizona and Diné College. So again, strengthening relationships between universities. So Diné College, they said that for the outline uses of this new greenhouse would be to teach, to train, and to develop a stronger workforce and eventually produce crops that they would be able to continue to give back to their community, give back to the school, give back to the hospital. So those are the goals that Diné College had. And eventually, you know, understanding what those goals were, it would be the responsibility of the University of Arizona to continue to train and provide access to training for Diné College on CEA and hydroponic systems. There are other components to this, a photovoltaic system and a solar nanofiltration unit, which I'll talk a little bit about further on. But again, these are things that are traditionally taught at Diné College and not things that people have been well trained in within that community. So allowing the experts and the people who have professional experience here at the University of Arizona continue to teach and educate those that would be using these systems moving forward. So again, just highlighting the hoop house renovation, which is my project. These are some of the things that we did. We incorporated new technology. So we incorporated a CEA climate controller, a evaporative cooling system, a natural gas heating system, and ventilation fans. So again, these are ways to control your environment within your greenhouse. We installed new hydroponic systems, which are a deep water culture, a nutrient film technique, and a Dutch bucket system. I wish I had more time to be able to explain exactly what those are, but if you ever have time and want to come to one of our workshops, feel free. We'll teach you more about that. But again, these are the systems that we thought were most beneficial and were able to meet the needs of the community to be able to grow the crops that they wanted. And then we also reinforced the current structure. So we strengthened the ends and then provided stronger rafter support to be able to support some of these hydroponic systems and their growing moving forward. This is a renovation schematic that I put together, highlighting some of the systems, the layout. Again, we have a deep water culture, which are just giant beds of nutrient solution with styrofoam rafts that float on top, providing an opportunity for plants to grow and their roots to develop within the pool. And then an NFT system, which are giant rain gutters with holes in them that constantly run nutrient solution across them so that the plants can grow and have access to the nutrient solution. And then Dutch buckets, which are just buckets filled with substrate or things that they grow in, like volcanic rock or perlite. They're constantly irrigated. So these are a variety of systems that we introduced, that we wanted to introduce into this greenhouse. Again, just a different point of view. But again, we had a variety of different things also added, which I'll talk about in the next one. Just imagine walking into it. And then this is this is more for the electrical component. I am not an electrician by any stretch of the imagination, but this is what they wanted to be able to move forward and start discussing getting connected to the electrical grid. Again, as I had mentioned, the more sophisticated, higher cost greenhouse that is right next to ours is not actually connected to any power. So with our collaboration with Diné College, we've been working with other groups that have provided funding and training to be able to get our system connected to the grid and potentially the other one. But ours, as was mentioned, is an off-grid system. So I will talk a little bit about how we're getting the power to do all this in a little bit. But yeah, so this is all the variety of systems that we are connecting to the power grid. So a big part of being able to move forward with this project was actually help and assistance from a variety of people. One of the biggest ones being the Diné College Teacup experience, which is a program that they hold over the summer, where they bring in students who don't have a background in STEM, not or necessarily in STEM, but are interested in learning about a variety of different environmental topics. So during this time or during the summer, we were actually able to go as IndigeFEWSS group to teach them a variety of modules about food, energy, and water that are focused specifically on their nation, so on the Navajo Nation and within their community. So we were able to teach about food, what food might look like in controlled environment agriculture in a tribal community, what kind of hydroponics systems would be suitable and how to run them and use them and how to grow plants with them. And during that time, we obviously had a lecture period where we sat in a classroom, but the other part was getting out into the greenhouse, and I was able to get some help. Calder, who's here, has always been very helpful, and my advisor, Dr. Kastira, and some of the students, we were able to put together an NFT system. And we were also able to give them tours of the greenhouse and get them excited about the potential of using this moving forward in their education. So some of the outcomes of the project, obviously installing some of the hydroponic systems. So we have 3 variety of systems. We have a nutrient filled channel, which again looks like rain gutters that plants are growing out of. The nutrient solution is at the bottom in the black bucket that's continuously pumped and recycled over and over again, feeding the plants at the roots. We have Dutch buckets, which are in the middle, which are giant buckets filled with, some kind of non-soil media, where irrigation is dripped on top of the plant. It falls to the bottom of the bucket and then is collected in a drainage tube and into a reservoir that continuously recycles that nutrient solution. This works really well for vining crops like tomatoes and cucumbers and a variety of other crops. But since they had interest in growing tomatoes, we suggested Dutch buckets. And then also a deep water culture system, which again is a giant pool filled with nutrient solution with styrofoam rafts that plants sit on. So these are all the outcomes that we hope to be able to provide to them, including as a big part of my project is providing educational and training manuals for system maintenance. So teaching or providing either video or handwritten instruction manuals for the students to be able to continue using and maintaining these systems outside of us being there all the time. So eventually implementing this curriculum, implementing these manuals and training into curriculum that could be taught at Diné College for some sort of degree course, perhaps a BS in agriculture. So these are things that will come out of this project. At the bottom, I've also placed, so in our nutrient film channels, we have 40 channels. Each one I think holds about 18 plants. So that's about 720 plants that we're looking at. NFTs work well for leafy greens and herbs. So they could potentially grow about 720 plants in that one system, and they could harvest anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. So that's a lot of produce that they can grow within the year. Dutch buckets are about the same. So we had 48 buckets. Oh, I'm sorry, we had 24 buckets. So that's about 48 plants, and each bucket can hold 2 plants. And each tomato will produce about 5 pounds of produce a month, and can be grown for several months, if not a year. So again, these are just very, basic estimations, but again, producing about 480 pounds a month of tomatoes using their systems that they have at Diné College. Deep water culture has a potential of about 436 plants. So I think the average is about 2.25 per square foot. And I don't remember how many square feet, but I did the calculations already. So about 436 plants or leafy greens, lettuces can be produced and harvested anywhere between 30 to 40 days. So about every 4 weeks from start to finish. So they would produce a lot more using these than they would with their traditional raised bed. But again, these are some of the outcomes. This is what the community wanted. There were also discussion about strawberries, but we felt like these would probably be best. Strawberry is a little bit more finicky and the system is a little bit more complicated, but eventually we feel like if they'll be able to get these up and going, then we can introduce also other systems that they could further train on. And as I'm getting ready to wrap up, so again, I talked a lot about CEA. The goal of IndigeFEWSS was to train interdisciplinary students to go out and tackle real world problems in tribal communities. So I was just one prong within this pilot project that focused on food production, how to secure more food within your tribal nation and improving your sovereignty as a nation. But that also, I mean, without, electricity and without water, then we wouldn't be able to grow anything. So again, working hand in hand with other students has been probably the best experience that I've had. I've learned a lot more aside from just CEA. I've learned a lot about PV panels, which are photovoltaic panels, a water filtration unit. I knew nothing about that, and I have come to learn how important water is. Not only just water, but clean, uncontaminated water, and how to get it. So again, this is a picture of a PV panel, which powers this wonderful device in the back, which is a solar nanofiltration unit, which will clean out particles within the water to make it clean and drinkable. So again, just an integrated, kind of more holistic approach to our thinking. From the wonderful Dr. David Begay, he said that Indigenous thinking is the perception that all things are naturally interconnected, meaning everything works as a whole and is undivided. So we can't just pick one part of the problem and try to solve it. We have to look at all parts of the problem and solve them together. So that was my project, and it eventually leads into other great things that have been happening. So I will hand it off to Chantel.
Okay, my name is Chantel Harrison. I am a second-year master's student in the Controlled Environment Agriculture program, and I'm going to be sharing information about my project, which is called Indigeponics, under my PSM advisor, Dr. Tristan Hooks. But before I start that, I just want to do two things. One is just to thank all the programs and individuals who are sponsoring and supporting the Native Voices in STEM. This is such a special moment as a graduate student to kind of be on the tail end of my journey here and to be able to share my project. So I'm very, very thankful. And I'm just wanted to say thanks to Dr. Kasira for nominating us. The second part is I want to share a little bit about who I am and how I've kind of evolved to where I'm at today. So I am a Navajo woman. My clans are Pitani, Nakaidene, Nahobani, and Tojini. I'm originally from Kirtland, New Mexico, which is a very small town. But I've lived in Queen Creek, Arizona, which is on the East Valley of Phoenix. And both of these spaces have provided unique opportunities for me to kind of figure out who I am in the world. And I think it's kind of representative of how graduate students are juggling living in two different worlds and maybe three with academia. But I think all of my work has been kind of formed through my childhood experiences of being on my paternal grandparents' farm in Hogback, New Mexico. I looked forward to helping pick melons, like running in the cornfields and kind of just like doing kid stuff on a farm. And I think that experience has kind of really imprinted that food can bring people together, not only from our immediate families, but on a larger scale through our communities. So my undergrad degree was in nutrition, and I really loved that opportunity. I have worked in clinical and community nutrition. I worked at a food bank in Southwest Washington. And that experience kind of helped me reconnect with learning how to grow food, because that's something I kind of missed when I lived in Phoenix. But all of these experiences have kind of led me to this moment. And with my experiences working with tribes in Arizona, it's kind of made me more excited about being a graduate student and kind of doing something new for me, but also maybe new for our communities. So my projects have kind of developed into two subset projects within the name of Indigeponics. So the Indigeponics greenhouse project was created based on the internship credits I needed to complete for my graduate degree. I had a difficult time finding an internship experience that I thought would be beneficial for me in terms of learning about the systems, being more hands-on. And luckily, Kara had sent me an email about the Howry program's Resilience Native Pathways Award. So Dr. Kassir and I applied for that, and we were awarded some monies to start my own internship, to develop my own internship based on what I thought was important for not only me, but maybe for going back to like Jaymus's work, tying in tribal communities. And this last couple months, we have started the Community Food Resilience Project, and that is funded through the Campus Sustainability Fund and their Indigenous Centered Mini Grant. So the aims of the Indigenous Greenhouse Project is kind of intertwined within the two programs, but these were our specific aims. So one was to indigenize controlled environment agriculture, two, to create a demonstrational garden that we could use to show campus members, or if tribes or any other organizations wanted to come see the greenhouse at the controlled environment agriculture campus. You know, we wanted to be kind of the first graduate-led group to do that. And then the third component was to knowledge share and promote inclusivity within the field of controlled environment agriculture. So for our first aim, this seems kind of like a big title for what we're trying to do, but ultimately we were just trying to identify indigenous cultivars that could be respectfully grown in a controlled environment greenhouse. And for me, that also meant including cultural components to it. Going back to my experience at a farm, there's things that we've learned that we kind of forget when we're growing in kind of mass quantities in a greenhouse. So for me, including the perspective of like plants are relatives and ensuring that the way we treat and interact with the plants is really important. The other part of that is including kind of our ways of knowing. Sometimes we don't have specific data measurements that we can show to know that we know the plant's going to do well or not going to do well. So that's kind of a component we're still learning about and still integrating. And then the next phase is reevaluating how we measure and collect data, especially for indigenous crops, specifically within CEA. So this was an interesting kind of topic to start with. when we started talking about having our own greenhouse. And I think it requires having these open conversations, not only with our academic advisors, but with people in industry, with other departments and programs. So we're all kind of on the same page of what we define data as Indigenous researchers working with plants. For me, it was really important to have clear outlines about where this data was going to be stored and handled, and then the tensions behind this project. I'll go more into that in the next slide, but this project requires kind of melding two different perspectives of data. So within the field of CEA, plants that are typically grown are lettuce, tomatoes, strawberries, and those kind of have a subset of data points that are required to showcase or show the efficiency of growing in a hydroponic system. So in the data focused column, we have light, temperature, humidity, ideal pH, EC, and of course harvested biomass, so what we can actually consider edible and used for produce. On the right side, this is kind of our new, I don't know how to say, well, I guess I would say new perspective of Indigenous focused data in CEA. So instead of going to like the hard facts of like light measurements and temperature measurements, we're letting the plant choose whether or not they want to grow, whether they want to germinate, whether they want to transition into our bigger systems when we transplant them, and then going back to, do they want to flower? So we're not trying to create an ideal temperature or ideal pH and EC based on facts, because we don't know that right now about these plants. And I don't necessarily know that I would want that information to be out there. So those are just kind of things that we are continually considering throughout this project. And another major component to that is acknowledging the past and present relatives. We know that the seeds that we are using, the indigenous seeds we are using, have history behind them. They have stories and traditions behind them. So for me, it was really important to acknowledge that there are communities where these seeds come from. And within those communities, there are seed keepers who have taken care of these seeds. So for me, even the way we interact with them is really important. There's no specific ceremonies or traditions about how to grow in a controlled environment greenhouse. There are some tribes that have kind of ceremonies and stuff like that. But we're figuring out a new way that we can incorporate both. And I took Dr. Trosper's class two semesters ago, his traditional ecological knowledge. And this was kind of a question I had for him. And his kind of perspective was, oh, there's nothing like this. Maybe you should consider creating your own ceremonies or creating things that are important and meaningful for you. So that's kind of how we express our person as being native, but also being a scientist and learning as we go. So this is the demonstration greenhouse located at the Controlled Environment Agriculture campus. Originally, we had hoped to start last year, but things had come up and we were finally able to move into the greenhouse this semester. So we kind of had a very short time frame to get everything set up and get the plants growing. So this is kind of a slow progression of what our greenhouse looks like. And some of the systems Jaymus has already talked about, but I'll talk about more of that. Yeah. So this is what the outside of the greenhouse looks like, and this is located at this yak. So our greenhouse is about 1,142 square feet. I did not have any experience in greenhouse design or engineering or any of this type of stuff. So the schematic that I have there is probably like the 7th version of that. It's definitely learning experience, because there's different kind of like nuances that you don't really think about going into this as a new person. So Dr. Hicks is very, very helpful in helping me understand just like the placement of these systems, in terms of just like safety, how well we're able to move around these systems and use them. So that is the inside. This is what it actually looks like. I took this picture yesterday, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. So similar to what Jaymus has at the Diné College, we have 2 deep water culture systems. We have the Microgreen Rack, the 5-tray propagation system, and 4 Beto Bucket systems. And we chose indigenous crops that we felt would do well in a greenhouse based on their kind of natural environment. So most of our plants are about 90-day life. They have about a 90-day life cycle, and they're used to warmer temperatures. This was really important, as we know it gets hotter during the spring here. So we wanted to make sure that we had the most kind of appropriate environment for them. So that includes just learning where to place them. So for the lettuce, they needed to be in a cooler area closer to the wet wall. We had to think about the sunlight and shading. I think Calder and I moved one system around like 3 times to figure out what the ideal sunlight was for the system. And we also had to kind of consider what type of substrates and growing medias we were going to use, considering that most of these plants are used to growing in the hot, like low desert of Arizona. So we kind of have a combination of substrates that we're using. So we have hydrogen, perlite, and we have some peat moss plugs that we're using. So this is our microgreen rack. We use it to grow indigenous and like non-indigenous microgreens. We've used this as a teaching tool for our workshop. I have some points about like what the benefits of each system are. I don't have to go into those, but if you wanted kind of an opinion or some feedback about these systems, I'm sure we would all love to tell you. So this is our 5-tray propagation system. This is kind of where it all starts. We have our indigenous and non-indigenous plant starts in this. I think we can start about 600 to 800 plants at one time. So it's very efficient. I love the system. The reservoir has an automatic valve, kind of like a toilet valve, that refills the water for us, so we don't have to do that. So I love this system. It's so easy to use. And then we also have the deep water culture systems. Jaymus kind of had some information about his deep water culture systems, but we're using our systems. They were repurposed from a research project that was ending at the beginning of the semester. So we decided we'd want to take those on. So we're using those to grow lettuce that has been donated, and we have 2 different types of basil that we're growing. For our indigenous crops, we selected a Beto Bucket system. So we have 4 of these systems. Each have 10 buckets. They can each hold two plants per bucket. So for our plants, we expected them to grow a little bit taller and to become a little bushier. So most of our plants are only 1 per bucket. And those are all commercial type setups. We also wanted to include a kind of home system. So if anyone wanted to kind of try growing something hydroponically or through a different way, we would have something to show and demonstrate. So this is the Kratky, Kratky bucket system. This is very affordable. We set these up about a month ago, and the plants have actually really tolerated growing in these systems. Yeah, technically, I think we're supposed to have black buckets, but we couldn't find them anywhere in Tucson, so we're using the good old Lowe's buckets. But essentially, that is just a bucket full of water and nutrient solution, and the inside of the lid has kind of it's kind of like an inside hat. So there's the hydrogen, expanded hydrogen in there, along with the peat moss that we germinated the seeds in. So essentially, the roots from the peat moss are reaching towards the water, and they're getting nutrients through that. And then they're also getting oxygen through just being exposed to the air. So that's a very affordable system if you're interested at home. And I love it because you can also use it in bigger spaces, or if you just have like a patio or a sidewalk, you could set this up fairly easy. So I think it would also be fair to show just like the logistics of what it took to get to this point. This was setting up our first system. This was the 5-tray propagation system. It looked fairly easy to set up, but it took us a while to just kind of figure out how to set it up. And then we also had the Microgreen Rack, which was already assembled and just ready to be wheeled into the greenhouse. The other systems required a little bit more labor in terms of moving and unloading boxes, but it was really fun. The last system that we purchased and was delivered was the Beto Bucket systems. We had to wait about like a month just because of all the weather changes and that affected transportation. So this was a 2-day job. Colzer and Jaymus did a great job of setting up the frames for the systems. Jaymus and I came back the next day, and we thought it would be an easy just like setup of just like putting the buckets in, starting the drip lines, putting in the perlite, and transplanting. This was the longest day. We were there. I think we were there from like 9:30 to like 8. And we did take a 1-hour like mental lunch break at Guadalajara's. So yeah, the picture on the left is like when we started, and then the picture on the right is when we're just kind of done for the day. But this was honestly a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Did not know how to do drip lines until that day. So yeah, it's continually learning new things. So the other component to this research project is finding a home for the produce that we grow. So through different partnerships on campus, through WDRC, NASA, and the campus pantry, we've delivered to those programs. We've delivered lettuce, microgreens, and basil. And shout out to Wasabe for helping us, because the lettuce, harvesting the lettuce looks easy, but it's actually very labor intensive. I think that took us maybe an hour and a half, and there's 2 of us. And those DWCs, I believe they hold about 144 plants. So that just takes a lot of time. So the other component to Indigeponics is the Community Food Resiliency Project. And so we have different aims with this project too. So one is to just continue to share knowledge. We wanted this to be a community-focused program, and we also wanted to provide resources that can be used at the university and also with tribal departments, organizations, and anyone else who is interested. So the ways that we share knowledge is through our workshops. So we were able to host a mini series focused on hydroponic systems that could be used at home. So those included microgreen kits and nutrient film technique desktop kits. Within those workshops, we were able to have tours in our Indigeponics greenhouse, the teaching greenhouse, which has flowers, melons, hops, coffee plants. And that was just more to get people excited and see a bigger scale greenhouse. We also were able to see an aquaponics greenhouse, and I think some of the participants were able to feed the fish. So that was kind of cool. And then the other components are continuing to provide educational materials. So with the workshops, we created workbooks. We have examples here if you want to look at them. So we do have printed materials, but we're also developing a website so we can share those online, and they will be accessible until we have the website or until we don't have the website. So this is kind of just an overview of the microgreens workshop we had in March. That focus was on microgreens. So they were able to sow I think eight 5x5 small trays. So they had different types of microgreens that they had. The highlights for that workshop were Jaymus did a great job of sharing about Diné food sovereignty and agriculture, CEA on Navajo Nation, and we tried to do some more information about hydroponic basics and indigenous microgreens. So that was kind of a longer day. But for the next workshop, we shortened it just because we know this time of year is really busy for people. So we had the same kind of setup. We had the greenhouse tours. We had the nutrient film technique basics, and we continue to offer an updated version of the workbooks. So this is just information about our website. We're still working on it. I'm hoping we can launch it in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but that will hold our information that we've created so far. So the future of IndigeFEWSS is exciting. Oh, and yeah, Indigeponics, sorry. Indigeponics is really exciting. We're going to continue to have the greenhouse over the summer. Some of the plants are starting to produce, so we didn't want to cut it short. Technically, we were supposed to have it until May, but we want to see just how well those plants produce and maybe learn how to process some beans. The other part is just continuing to work on the website and connecting with different communities and tribal departments if they're interested. So this is the entire team behind Indigeponics. We are the 3 graduate students here on this project, and Dr. Hooks is my primary advisor, and he's also kind of the lead faculty member on this. He's been so supportive and kind and understanding. Could not say enough good things about him. I've had such a great experience working with him. And then Dr. Hall, I recently met her this semester, and she is the one who shared the information about the Campus Sustainability Fund with me, and she's been a big proponent about that. So when I was making this presentation, I realized I don't have any photos with the 3 of us. So these videos of us working are kind of just going to have to do, but I just wanted to acknowledge Calder and Jaymus for helping me in this project. There's no way I could have done any of this without them, and they each have their own skill set and work ethic that kind of works well within our team. So I just want to thank them because they do a lot. They do a lot that's not paid for. So I just think that they should be acknowledged. So this is our funding and support, obviously through the Campus Sustainability Fund, the Agnes NELMS Hallery program. I am a Sloan Scholar, so that is also how I am able to host or to be able to do this type of work, and as well as the IndigeFEWSS program. But also like to acknowledge the Biosystems Engineering Department and the SEAC for allowing us to host these workshops. So that is our presentation. So if you want to follow us.
Is that the same handle everywhere?
So that is just for Instagram. Yeah, we haven't expanded. Yeah, our social media team is still forming.
All right. Thank you so much, Chantel and Jaymus. Yeah, thank you so much, Chantel and Jaymus, for that presentation. If we have any questions in the room, I'll handle that, and then Kara will be dealing with questions online.
I just have a comment. I think both of your slides are just beautiful. The pictures are beautiful. The way the text is laid out is really clear and really nicely done.
Thank you. We coined ourselves amateur. What do you call those? Amateur media graphic designers.
I don't know. I think you're above amateur.
Yeah. No, we like to play off of each other's strengths. So it's
Really
been good.
nicely done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of comments in the chat, but not questions. Jana Segal said, what efforts you have made to be sustainable to conserve water, energy, and single-use plastic produce containers. And Murat Kasira says, great job, Chantel, Jaymus, and Calder. Proud of you all. Nancy Peterson says, this work is so exciting and your team so talented. I hope you all continue building on this.
I have a quick question. So awesome presentation, and I'm just curious. I love the name Indigeponics. It's so catchy. Oh, okay. So my question is, like when you did your workshop, what were any of the takeaways? So if you're going to do it again, what were some lessons learned or things you do differently, or anything that you got from that experience?
I mean, it was interesting. Everybody really enjoyed the tours. So the first time that we did it, we budgeted like 30 minutes, I think, for like the tours, and we were going to hit 3 different greenhouses. But we got into the teaching greenhouse, and Dr. Hooks, he's amazing at, entertaining everybody in the greenhouse. So we ended up spending 30 minutes in there alone, just trying different produce. He loves to teach. Yeah, we tried edible flowers. There was a whole bunch of tomatoes there that they ate. He makes sure everybody leaves with something. So yeah, so that was one thing that we did the second time, is we focused more on the tours, and then we did more hands-on stuff and less in classroom teaching, because we pretty much gave everybody, what we wanted them to walk out with in their little handbooks. So we focused more on the tours, getting them excited about it, and then doing the hands-on activities. So there was a little bit of shift. I mean, there was a lot of information that we gave in the first workshop, but that was kind of a precursor to understanding what led us into this work that we're doing now. So yeah, I guess lessons learned, get people out there. It was a little much for some people, because as it gets hotter, it gets really hot and more hot in the greenhouse. So we had some people that didn't last the whole time, but that's fine. But we like to get people excited by taking them and touring through the greenhouses. So
Thank you.
So all 3 of y'all are graduating, right? Well, in the process. So like, what are the next steps then? So like, are we just ending the project after this, or?
Question is, what are the next steps in the project since all 3 of us are graduating?
So we had some attendees who were part of different programs at the university, and they were really excited about potentially collaborating to continue this in some way. We haven't really talked about what that would look like. I know there's been talks about maybe renting a greenhouse at the SEAC to continue this type of work, or just as a community greenhouse to learn about hydroponic systems. So there's talks about wanting to keep it. We just haven't got to the point where we're completely sure.
yeah, so yeah, we had a lot of people that were interested. We've met with a couple other tribes that have been interested in the work that we're doing, and have had the discussion of what can we do to get some of this information to our communities. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like we said, we had the intentions of starting this earlier, and we have had a lot of good reception of it, but hopefully it will continue either as a different coined name, or but yeah, we've had a lot of individual students that have been interested in continuing with something similar. We talked to some people at Howry who were really excited about it, and potentially extending a couple things so that we can keep working through the summer. But as far as the future, I mean, Chantel and I have always made a discussion about, making this a profession as opposed to, doing it now as graduate students, but eventually making it into a business. And I can say that officially we did start our LLC yesterday. So it is a licensed name now, so that's nice. But what that looks like with connections to the university, we're not sure, but we're open to discussion. So.
And since Calder was such an integral part of this, will you also say what you're doing next?
I am looking at different options when I graduate in August. Yeah, but I'll continue on helping this summer.
So I did not adequately ask one of the online questions, so I apologize. What efforts have you made to be sustainable, to conserve water, energy, and single-use plastic? Apologies for not asking that.
No, that's fine. I am not sure in reference to which presentation, but as far as sustainability, the point of hydroponics is, I think the focus is sustainability, using what little resources you have and playing to your strengths. So like in tribal communities, it's beneficial because there's land, there is a lot of sunlight usually, and temperatures are pretty good for the most part. So playing to those strengths, putting a greenhouse on there so that you can better conserve or augment those conditions, but also hydroponics in themselves use about 1/16 the amount of land that is used in traditional farming. The amount of water, about 1/10 of water that's used in soil agriculture is used in hydroponics. So sustainability is at the forefront of CEA and hydroponics. A lot of the issue comes with energy use, which was kind of why we wanted to talk about off-grid greenhouses, which are using solar panels to produce your energy, using the water, cleaning it, using solar panels, but also using that brine, which is all the leftover water that's not suitable for drinking or irrigation, and using it in some other way. So we have actually talked about using that rejected water in our evaporative cooling system. So using that water, running it over our pads to cool our greenhouses. So really using every part of what we have available to us. And within our own greenhouse, I don't know 100%. Again, hydroponics in themselves is pretty sustainable. So.
Thanks, Jaymus. There is one more question online, and then we will have to wrap up and thank our speakers. Scott Willie says, great presentation. Question, Indigenous communities almost always view life in a cyclical and reciprocal relationship. Looking at your experiences working with Diné College, what are some ways that you integrate the knowledge you learned from the community?
So really, a lot of what has guided the work there has been from Diné College. We've really utilized a lot of their students. Whenever we've done a project, we've made sure that the students are there learning how to, build the systems. They have interns there that are learning how to weld and all that other stuff. When we put the solar panels up there, we had students from the University of Arizona and Diné College there learning about installation of PV panels. So really that's kind of guided a lot of the work that we've done, but our discussions at Teacup, there's always new things that we've learned. We did a big group project before that was kind of disconnected, but feedback from the students shows that they want it to kind of be more connected. And so we were able to create a group project that really highlighted and brought in food, energy, and water all at once, as opposed to separating them into individual projects. So I hope that answered some of your question, but again, a lot of just working directly with the university, working directly with Diné College has helped guide the overall outcomes of this project, and really working with them. They have interests in doing these kind of things, so really listening to them and implementing their suggestions have made this project and hopefully our project Indigeponics moving forward to be successful. So. But thank you all for your time and for being here both in person and online, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chantel and Jaymus, for speaking with us today. Thank you for everyone for joining, and thank you to our co-sponsors, IndigeFEWSS, the Controlled Environment Ag Center, the UA Sloan Partnership, Indigenous Resilience Center, Water Resources Research Center, and Societal Impact. We invite you to the next seminar, which will be returning in the fall of 2023 and will be hosted by the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. Thank you all very much and have a great summer.
Yeah.